Hello, yes, a good morning, a good afternoon, or a good evening to you, however you may be listening and wherever you may be listening. This is the latest edition of the Bolton Sports Media NFL podcast, coming to you after a 2 week hiatus for, well, was it a 1 week hiatus? I took 1 week off. I think that's only a 1 week hiatus. I think that's what it is. But yes, I was back in the UK last week, just visiting some friends and family. And I just didn't I didn't take my podcast equipment with me because I wanted to enjoy it. But that doesn't mean I didn't enjoy any of the news that was coming out of the NFL, even less or any less. Whatever you could tell, I'm still a bit jet lagged, so you can tell. A few words may slip out and be a little bit wrong, but hopefully it's still an enjoyable podcast for you as we discuss the latest that's come out of the NFL. And we will do that once we get through the introduction and the admin for the show, which is as simple as saying thank you very much for joining. You are listening to this on YouTube, so feel free to like, subscribe, leave a comment, hit the bell notification to make sure you're up to date with the latest episodes whenever they come out, and do whatever it is that you need to do or you feel you want to do to help this podcast grow. And don't forget to check us out on our other social medias. We are at Bolton Sports Media on Instagram and TikTok, and we are at MRB Sports Media on Twitter. So give us a follow there. And if you are a returning listener, then as always, thank you so much for continuing to make me that little part of your week. Right, and with that, we need to get into the meat of the podcast. And this one is going to be relatively quick as a show. Mainly because, as I explained, I've just been away for the week and I haven't been able to pay as much attention to the NFL as I wish I could. But there was one story that really caught my eye and got my interest over the past couple of days, and that was the news circulating that the NFL is thinking about playing a game on Thanksgiving Eve, the night before Thanksgiving. Obviously, we know the NFL has their 3 games on Thanksgiving. We don't know what those games will be just yet. There's a bunch of games that have been announced, and we know the Lions and the Cowboys have their games, and there's the Sunday. Well, the Sunday night. I say Sunday night because usually NBC that broadcast the game and they do the things, but the prime time game, as it were, on in the evening. So we know those are happening, and then as was introduced, recently, you have the Black Friday game. I wouldn't be surprised if that gets brought back into it again. So you got those 4 games on over the Thanksgiving holidays. Now we're going to see if we get another one. Again, it's been reported, it's not been confirmed. They're not, it's not been 100% confirmed that they're going to do this. But I think it just shows that nothing is going to be off limits for the NFL. I'd say within the next 10 years. We've already seen that they are intruding, shall we say, on a number on the holidays. Christmas was always an NBA day historically. Now the NFL is taking over. The NBA still has their days, but the NFL is taking that over now. Again, Black Friday was taken off. There's all these sorts of, Saturday was strictly college football, but then after college football season ended, they started putting games on Saturday. It just shows that there is really nothing that will be off limits for the NFL. And I think with this talk about the games being a planned game on Wednesday, and I'll get to the planned bit in a second. I think it does go to what I've been saying for a while is there will come a time, again, probably within the next 10 years, and there will probably need to be some legal ease around it. But there will come a time where they will manufacture the schedule in such a way that we will get an NFL game every night of the week. I don't think it's impossible to think about it when think about teams that could come off buys and the international games, which, by the way, it looks as if some fears have been put to rest because I mentioned a couple of weeks ago there was talk that the international game between the Rams and the 49ers that's being played in Australia could be played on the Wednesday to help the team get back and whatever. It looks as if that's going to be avoided because it seems as if the Seahawks' opener is going to be on a Wednesday, which is good. That's as it should be. The defending champion should kick off the season. That's absolutely fine. And then the Rams game in Australia is going to kick off on a Thursday to still give them the time to get back or whatever. But so planned games on Wednesday. I know it happened a couple of years ago when it was the Giants hosted the Cowboys and they moved it onto the Wednesday to to avoid one of the national conventions. I think it was the Democratic Convention in 2012. So yeah, so there have been the occasional playing. Then there was obviously the COVID season where the Pittsburgh Steelers ended up playing on the Wednesday, um, after all their mess up with the Ravens and their game, and then the Christmas Wednesday game we've just had. There are a couple of planned games on Wednesdays. This is looks like another one. It's started to slowly creep into the not the lexicon, the zeitgeist of the NFL, to an extent that we are going to become more acceptable and more understanding of it. Then the challenge is okay, right? We've got Monday, we've got Wednesday, we've got Thursday, we've got Fridays, we've got Saturday. When can we get the Tuesday night game in? How are they going to do that? Is that going to be a team that plays on the Tuesday, then goes into their bye so they can get their recovery on that short week? Is it going to be what I've been saying for a couple of years, or a couple of weeks rather? Could be an idea is that you have teams play back to back, so there's not a disadvantage. So you play maybe the previous. Just trying to think, the maths may actually work here. If you play it the Thursday night, and then you play on Thursday night football, the Steelers Browns, say, just for example, Steelers Browns, and then you turn around and make them play on the Tuesday. Yeah, I think that works. Yeah, 5 days rest. Yeah, probably. Whatever. There will come a way that they will work out how to get a game on Tuesday. And then once it's all sorted, okay, we can do this, this, and this. I think that is going to be the end goal of the NFL, is to make sure that every single night of the week there is an NFL game. And again, you can work this out however you want with buys and schedules and whatever. I think that is the end goal for the NFL. I'm not going to say they're tired of, but they, as I've said, they will look at every opportunity that they can, and they will exploit it. We've seen that's the way for for years now. Is slowly let's get into it. Once it becomes more accepted, then we'll just pile it on and make more. So that is what I think is going to be happening. Again, I think within the next 10 years of the NFL, and I'm I'm not necessarily a fan of it, if I'm being brutally honest. I can't remember which show it was that was discussing it, but I think there is something special about the NFL schedule as it is. Okay, we've got the prime time games, Monday, Thursday, and Sunday or whatever. That's those are special games. If you're having it every night, it kind of dilutes it. And even some of the primetime games, I'm thinking, the Thursday night footballs has gone through their fair share of abuse over the years of how the bad quality is. It'll be the same on Tuesday nights. Yeah, people will tune in because they'll start it off Tuesday night football, this brand new thing, and they'll market it, and they'll sell the rights off to some individual, just to get the rights for Tuesday night football. It'll be brilliant. They'll start off with Rams 49ers, or they'll start off with Eagles Cowboys, the big game to get you lured into it. And then come the end of the season, it'll be the 6-5 Titans against the 5-6 Colts, say. Just two teams in particular. And they'll see, okay, let's see if we can do. It is going to be the end goal for the NFL. And don't say I didn't warn you. Again, I don't want it to go that way, but I think if you look at the way the NFL is handling things, that is the way they are intending it to go, and this is just the latest step in that. And now we move on to the second and penultimate topic of the show, because usually I have two big topics, two main, off-field topics to start the show, and then I go on to a league roundup whenever I'm doing this in season and just review some of the games, and then it just evolves. But with this being, the start of free agency, there was obviously a big, swell of movement when free agency started. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go around the league and just look at some of the stories that again caught my eye. I'm not going to go into every single transaction that's happened, but just the big ones and the intriguing ones that have caught my eye, and to give you my thoughts on them. There's only really one place to start, and that is the Maxx Crosby trade. Again, you have to be living under a rock to not know exactly what happened with him and the Ravens. Yeah, on the surface, I completely understand what was going on. I've said if the Raiders are looking to rebuild, which it looks like they're doing, then they need to get some ammunition from somewhere. And if they're not going to surrender the number one pick and they're fine with Fernando Mendoza as their quarterback, that's okay. But you've got to get the pieces around him to make it work. Who's the next one, on the list? Who's the best player they can do to, they can offer up to get some draft capital? It's Maxx Crosby. They were arming and ahhing about what they were going to do, and they made the right decision to offer him up to a trade. And I think what they were going to get back from the Baltimore Ravens was a fair trade for someone of Maxx Crosby's talent. So they did the right thing. Obviously, what happened with the Ravens, no one still is quite sure. I don't know if this is going to be something that's going to not come out for another 5 or 10 years. But the long and short of it is the Ravens basically said, they looked at him and said, no, that injury, we're not willing to take the risk, which is totally within their right to do. Again, no side has really done anything wrong here. It's just maybe the timings of it have been a bit off, and it's, just given people the wrong impression of things. But basically, right up until the last minute, it's like whenever you buy or sell a house, you go through the stages and it can be stopped at any time. And basically, once pen is put to paper, or in a house thing, keys are exchanged. Basically, each party has the right to pull out at any point to say, no, we're not going to go through with this. And the Ravens did their did their due diligence, said, hey, we understand what this injury is, we understand it's the thing, we're just not willing to take a risk on it, which is within their right to do. And they said, nope, we're not going to do it, which is totally fair. Again, part of this is down to the way the NFL media is, and they say, oh, terms have been agreed, and that makes it sound like it's official. But until, I think it's Ian Rappaport usually does makes the comment. Other people do it as well, but Ian Rappaport is the one that stands out to me. Until you see the graphic from the teams that says we have acquired XYZ in exchange for XYZ, that's when you know it's official. That's when you know it counts. Until that moment, basically every side in the deal has a chance to take a step back and say, let's not do this. So neither team or the player is wrong. That's what they do. That's absolutely fine. I do think it will be interesting to see what knock-on effect this has just moving forward. As many people have said, if the Raiders are still intent on trading Maxx Crosby, what's this going to do to his trade value? Are there going to be teams out there that say, no, we're going to offer you slightly less than what the Ravens offered, because, they're a smart organization, they're a well-run organization, they probably know what they're doing, so we'll take Maxx Crosby, but we'll give you slightly less because of his injury concerns. So, what happens if Maxx Crosby is absolutely fine? I've seen this mentioned on a couple of outlets. What happens if Maxx Crosby goes and gets 15 sacks this season and plays the way that Maxx Crosby always does? Isn't that Ravens doctor going to be in a little bit of trouble? The one that didn't clear him, I never know what the punishment was for the doctor that never cleared Drew Brees for the Miami Dolphins. And, the change that made. I always wonder what happened to him. But, same thing with the Ravens. Is he going to be in employment come the end of the season if Maxx Crosby plays the way that Maxx Crosby does? It's going to be very interesting to see. I mean, the rhetoric coming out from Maxx Crosby seems to be he's down to play for the Raiders. Good for him. That's grand. But that's another going to be a very interesting storyline moving forward. Is right? Are they still intent on trading him? And is he going to be playing to the way that he can? It's an interesting fallout for the rest of the season. Moving on to the next topic, and this isn't really in any particular order. I did have it in order that it sort of happened, but then when I was just adding to the notes, I just put them in random order. So this will be random, but these are just my thoughts on a couple of things. Trey Hendrickson to the Ravens, the replacement for Maxx Crosby. I think it's smart. I think in terms of what was given up and sacrificed for the Ravens and the talent disparity between Maxx Crosby and Trey Hendrickson, because I do like Trey Hendrickson. He's someone that I would gladly have on the Steelers. I think he's a really good player. He's no Maxx Crosby, but he is a very, very fine player. In fact, I wanted us to take him when I realized that the Bengals were going to let him go. So, yeah, there's that. Again, very solid pickup. And again, you gave up less and you get a lesser player, but again, the value of it works out perfectly. I think that's a really, really sharp addition for the Ravens to pick up instead of going for Maxx Crosby. Kyler Murray to the Minnesota Vikings was a very weird one, if I'm being honest. I understand there's a lot of pros from Kyler Murray's side. You know, he was a Vikings fan growing up, and this is a great place for him to learn. And Kevin O'Connell has done great work with quarterbacks or whatever. I get that. But the Minnesota Vikings quarterback room is just a mess at the moment. I don't think there's really any other way you can put that. What they've just done is they have thrown JJ McCarthy right under the bus. As Mike Florio said, when Kevin O'Connell was asked in his press conference, can you name a starting quarterback? And Kevin O'Connell says, words to the effect of, I didn't realize we have to do that yet. He's basically named Kyler Murray the starter because you asked that question 24 hours before Kyler Murray puts pen to paper. JJ McCarthy is the starter because that's how it's going. You then add in Kyler Murray to the mix, and all of a sudden, we don't have to. You've just named Kyler Murray the starter. So what is JJ McCarthy going to do? Is he going to seek a trade? Is he going to want to sit out or sit behind Kyler Murray for a year? What happens if Kyler Murray plays well? That's just taking another year out of JJ McCarthy's career. I would not be stunned if JJ McCarthy, if he loses the quarterback battle in training camp or mini camp or whatever start, I would not be surprised if JJ McCarthy goes and demands a trade. Because, okay, some of it is not his fault with the injury. You go get Sam Darnold and Daniel Jones or whatever to replace him. But if the Vikings aren't going to trust him to be the franchise quarterback that they used a first round pick on, then what's the point in being there? Let me go to a franchise where I can realistically and truly compete to be a number one quarterback. Let me go to the Rams where I can possibly take over Matthew Stafford's job. Let me go to the Steelers where I can possibly be the one to take over Aaron Rodgers with whatever's happening from there. Let me go to the Jets. They don't know what the hell they're doing. They never do. Let me go see if I can win. See if I can go win that job. Who else has got an aging quarterback? I know there's got to be one somewhere. It's not coming to mind right now. Let me go to not the Raiders because they've just got the thing. You get what I'm saying though. Let him have the chance to be a number one quarterback somewhere. So I think that's very likely going to happen if Kyler Murray at some point emerges as the clear number one. I think JJ McCarthy is going to want to ask for a trade out of Minnesota. Next up, we have Mike Evans going to the San Francisco 49ers. I must admit, a bit gut wrenching. One of my friends from university is a Buccaneers fan and absolutely loves Mike Evans, and I just felt so bad for him because I know how much Mike Evans meant to him and to, the Buccaneers as an organization. You can make the argument he's the best player that the Buccaneers have ever had. Not the best to play for the Buccaneers, that's Tom Brady, but the best ever Buccaneers player. You can make the argument is Mike Evans. Hall of Famer. I know they've had Warren Sapp and Brooks and all that lot, but you can make the argument he's brilliant. Going to the 49ers, I think, was a very interesting choice. Fits well. They've been looking for to add to their wide receiver situation. Ayuk is whatever Ayuk is doing. Juwan Jennings, Deebo Samuels. They've been trying to get that great wide receiver in. And now I think there's really no excuses for the San Francisco 49ers. Like, what more can you do as a team and an organization with the defense that you've had over the past couple of years, which has always been very good? Now you're getting the offensive pieces. You still got Christian McCaffrey. You still have George Kittle. Now you're adding a arguable first ballot Hall of Famer in Mike Evans to the team. Really, you are running out of excuses. And if the 49ers don't, make serious progress this year, either make the Super Bowl, win the Super Bowl, or whatever, if they don't make serious progress, I think Kyle Shanahan is going to go. Because you cannot have this amount of talent for so long and not be able to win the big game. It's just as simple as that. Great move to pick up Mike Evans, but this really has to be the final straw for them to really see, okay, is he really the guy that is going to take us forward? Moving forward, we then have Justin Fields to the Kansas City Chiefs. I think that's a very good move for him. If there's one place that you're going to go for a year, Well, there are a couple of places, the culture with Kevin O'Connell, the Vikings rather with Kevin O'Connell, the culture with Shane Steichen after we see what he's done with Daniel Jones, the Rams with Sean McVay, learning under Matt Stafford. Yes, you'll have to be back up for a year, but learning under them is absolutely fine. Kyle Shanahan, because we saw what he did with Mac Jones and Sam Darnold, that certainly helped their situations. Or Kansas City, learning behind learning behind Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. I think that's very, very smart. And if he can get those, get those moments, get those sparks, those highlight reels, showcase. That's what I meant to say. That showed those showcase moments to say, okay, he can still do something in this league. Then that's really going to elevate his game, and I think he's going to learn a lot. So I think that's a very smart move for him. Jalen Waddle to the Broncos. Now we move on to the Miami Dolphins in two cents. You can see that there is a clear organizational reset going on here. The fact they've got rid of Tua Tagovailoa, which I'll get to after this, but moving on from Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill in the same offseason, we knew exactly what this was going to look like. And there's even been calls for Davon Etchan, their running back, which shows a lot of teams saying, okay, there's a fire sale going on in Miami. Let's see exactly what we can get. That's a total rebuild. Put them down as the favorites, probably favorites to be the number one pick in 2027. You could just tell exactly what's going on. Great move for the Broncos. Again, another great wide receiver for someone like Bo Nix to be able to work with. Absolutely fantastic. Really going to help their cause and make them an even bigger prospect or challenging prospect in that AFC West. Obviously, Tua Tagovailoa been released. We expected that to happen. When it was going to happen or how it was going to be done, we weren't quite 100% sure. But he's finally been cut and he's moved to the Atlanta Falcons. Now it gets interesting because those are two very similar quarterbacks. Now, it's not like you brought in an aging veteran pocket passer to just shore things up if your mobile guy goes out. These are two very similar quarterbacks in Tua Tagovailoa and Michael Penix. In fact, I did say this, they are probably the only two, I think they are the only two starting caliber left-handed quarterbacks in the NFL these days. So, and the fact they've both landed up in Atlanta is just beyond weird. But that's going to be a very interesting battle again, especially when you consider the reputation that Michael Penix, Jr. got and what they gave up and the controversy that surrounded after they just got signed Kirk Cousins. So, how do you warrant that? I don't know. It doesn't really make sense. It makes sense for Tua to go to Atlanta. I just don't think it was right for Atlanta to offer him the job in the first place. I don't really think that's a good fit. I think you have to be all in on Michael Penix at this stage, and bringing someone like Tua makes me think, are they really that all in on Tua? I'm not sure. Kenneth Walker to the Chiefs. I think, again, a smart move. Weird that the Seattle Seahawks would let him go, but obviously they've made up their mind. I think that's what they're going to do. Letting a Super Bowl MVP go. Okay, fine. Not what I would have done, but if they think that was the right move, then go for it. And again, to the Chiefs, who their running game doesn't exactly excite you, does it? When you look at the players that they have, and it's always been very Mahomes driven. Has there really been that much of a effort? Yes, there's been some good players, but it's not really been a trademark of them, shall we say? And especially with Patrick Mahomes, coming off the injury that he's coming off of, he needed a little bit more help. So I think this is a pretty smart move to move on from the likes of Pacheco and Hunt. Good players, but could you make an upgrade? Yes, you can. And what better upgrade can you make than the Super Bowl MVP and Kenneth Walker? So good move all around, although a bit weird that the Seahawks would let him go. And finally, Malik Willis to the Miami Dolphins. Again, why he would want to go to what is clearly a rebuild, I'm not too sure. But he obviously thinks, there's the relationship with Jeff Hafley from Green Bay, that he obviously thinks there's a lot that he can bring. But again, who would want to be joining the Miami Dolphins at this time when it's pretty clear what is going to happen to them? But hey, good for him. If he wants to take that swing and bet on himself, as it were, then maybe he could be the one to turn things around. He's shown his sparks, whatever he's played for the Packers, but what's going to happen moving forward, we'll just have to wait and see. An interesting one. I think he will do well. I think he's built for tougher moments a bit more than Tua Tagovailoa was, but again, it's going to be very interesting to see why he took that on and whether or not the Dolphins are going to hold him back. Let's just put it that way. As they go through their rebuild, what is Malik Willis going to do for them at the quarterback position? And finally, before we go, I leave you with the non-NFL topic of the week. And I'm pretty sure I left you, or when I left you, I was talking about the World Baseball Classic and how much I was looking forward to it. And did it or did it not live up to all the expectations? I say, one of the reasons I was so looking forward to it was, the joy that and the flair and the passion that the Latino countries brought to it. And boy, did they bring that. And I think it was just brilliant. It served a whole new conversation about baseball, about whether or not it's more important than the World Series. And I've seen some debates for Americans, the World Series is more important, but for the World Baseball Classic and the chance to represent their country and all that stuff, it means so much more to all the other players, and pointing out the irony that an American sport, and of the, I think there's been like 7 World Baseball Classics, the Americans have only won 1. I do think there's a great irony in that. But yeah, the ending, slightly controversial, but the whole World Baseball Classic, again, whatever I could, when I was getting updates for it, because I couldn't watch the whole thing. But whenever I was getting updates, it was always something very fun and enjoyable. So brilliant to see. And I've seen some debate about maybe putting it in the middle of the season, maybe instead of the All-Star break. I can see that argument. Maybe having the All Star break on the Wednesday and then have the World Baseball Classic around it with players that didn't make you know the All Star break, make that the thing. I don't know. There's something to be said about it. I really do like the idea of the World Baseball Classic, and I hope that I hope it becomes a more regular thing. Have it every year. I like it. I really do. But that is it for this show. I want to thank you very much, as always, for tuning in. Don't forget, as I mentioned on the start of the show, because this is on YouTube, feel free to like, subscribe, leave a comment, and hit the bell icon to make sure you're updated with all the latest episodes. Follow us on our other social medias. We are at Borden Sports Media on Instagram and TikTok, and we are at MRB Sports Media on Twitter. So do what you need to do on there. If you're new, thank you very much. I hope you liked it. I hope you stick around. If you are returning, then as always, thank you so much for continuing to make this a part of your week or your fortnight, as we're now going to fortnightly episodes during the off season. So yeah, see you in 2 weeks. Hopefully there'll be plenty more to talk about as we get into the lead into the draft, as that continues to count down. So hopefully, plenty to talk about, which we will. Take care, and as always, stay safe. See you in 2 weeks.